Today, we're going to crack open one of philosophy's oldest and most powerful arguments for the existence of God. But we're not just going to study it like it's some dusty old textbook. Nope. We're going to treat this like a genuine detective story, following a trail of clues to see exactly where the evidence leads. So let's just dive right in with the biggest, most mind-bending mystery of them all. Why is there anything? Seriously, think about it. Why is there a universe with stars and planets and you instead of just an endless, silent, empty void? This is the fundamental question that kicks off our entire investigation. All right, Section 1, a universe-sized question. And this isn't just some late-night dorm room question. This is a serious philosophical puzzle. And to even begin to solve it, we need to look for clues, not in a lab, but in the very nature of everything that exists around us. Okay, to solve this mystery, the first clue we absolutely have to understand is this concept called contingency. It sounds a bit academic, but it's actually super simple. A thing is contingent if it doesn't have to exist. Its existence is dependent on other stuff. You, for example, you're contingent. You depend on air, water, food, this planet. Take any of those away and you're not here. So that brings us to Section 2, contingent versus necessary. Because at the absolute heart of this whole detective story are these two opposing ideas. And trust me, getting this distinction is going to be the key to the whole case. And this breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you've got contingent things. They could not exist. Their existence is kind of borrowed, It's conditional. But on the other side, you've got necessary things. These things cannot fail to exist. It's impossible for them not to be. Their existence is self-sufficient. Let's make this really concrete. You, me, this planet, the sun, all contingent. We can easily imagine a universe where none of us exist. But now try to imagine a world where 2 + 2 = 5. Or a triangle with 4 sides. You can't do it, right? It's literally impossible to even conceive of. That's a necessary truth. It has to be that way. So let's get to Section 3, the argument in 5 steps. How do we get from this idea of contingency all the way to an argument for God? Well, let's see how the case is built, piece by piece, just like a detective laying out the evidence for the jury. Now, the entire foundation of this argument rests on one big idea, the principle of sufficient reason. All that means is that things don't just pop into existence for no reason whatsoever. Everything that exists has some kind of explanation for why it's here. It's pretty much the bedrock of science and really all rational thought. So here's the whole chain of logic laid out for us. 1, everything has an explanation. 2, the universe exists and it's contingent, right? It could have been different. So it can't be its own explanation. That leads us to 3. The universe must have an explanation outside of itself. So what could that be? Well, 4. That explanation can't be another contingent thing, because then we'd just be back where we started. It has to be a necessary being, which leads us to the final conclusion, 5. Therefore, a necessary being, what this argument calls God, exists. Okay, Section 4, cross-examining the case. That argument seems pretty clean, pretty logical. But is it airtight? In any good detective story, you have to look for holes. You have to challenge the evidence. So let's bring on the counter-arguments and really cross-examine this thing. So let's really get into it. Does this train of reasoning actually hold up? A solid argument has to be able to withstand some serious questioning. So let's poke and prod at it and see if it stands firm. Let's start with the first thing that probably jumped into your mind. It's the most common objection by far. If everything has an explanation, well then, what caused God? It seems like a totally fair question. And honestly, it feels like a potential checkmate, right? But here's the rebuttal, and you gotta pay close attention to this. The argument never says everything has an external cause. It says every contingent thing does. A necessary being is, by its very definition, in a completely different category. It doesn't need an external cause, because the reason for its existence is in its own nature. It's self-explanatory. So asking what caused God is kind of like asking who's the bachelor's wife. It misunderstands the very definition of the term. Okay, another big objection. What about an infinite regress? Maybe the universe is just a set of dominoes that goes back in time forever and ever. But here's the counter. The argument isn't really talking about a temporal chain of events. It's talking about what is holding everything in existence right now. And these analogies just nail it. Think of a train with an infinite number of cars. Even if it goes back forever, it still needs an engine at the front, pulling it right now. Without that engine, the whole thing grinds to a halt. Or an infinite series of mirrors reflecting an image. You still need an actual object at the bottom for there to be any reflection at all. We're looking for the engine, the light source, the thing that's doing the causal work in the present moment. So here are a couple of other major challenges. Some philosophers say, hey, maybe the universe is just a brute fact. It just is, no explanation needed. The problem there is you're just throwing out that principle of sufficient reason, which is basically giving up on the investigation. Then others say, maybe the universe itself is the necessary being. But that's a tough sell, because the universe is constantly changing. Things come and go. That sounds a lot more contingent than necessary. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the argument's enduring power. After all of this back and forth, all this cross-examination, why is this argument, which is centuries old, still one of the most debated and discussed topics in philosophy? What gives it such staying power? Well, here's why it's so compelling. First, it's not about what kicked things off at the Big Bang. It's about what is sustaining reality right now. Second, because of that, it works even if you believe the universe is eternal and had no beginning. And third, the conclusion it reaches isn't just some vague cause. The logic forces you toward a being that must be unchanging, all-powerful, and eternal, which, hey, sounds a lot like the classic definition of God. And this right here is what proponents say is its most profound strength. It's not just another origin story. It's an explanation for present tense reality. It tries to answer that ultimate question, why is there something rather than nothing at this very second? And that's where our detective story ends. The contingency argument presents its case. It offers a complete, logical explanation for why reality itself exists. And in the end, it leaves us all with a challenge. It says, here is an answer, and if you think it's the wrong one, the question falls back to you. What's the alternative? What other story explains the ultimate mystery of why there is something rather than absolutely nothing at all?